The salt-stained pages of the ancient atlas seemed to whisper secrets as Julian traced his weathered fingers across their surface. For 3 decades, he had dedicated his life to studying forgotten maps and pursuing legends that others dismissed as fantasy. The archive beneath the university was his sanctuary, a place where dust motes danced in lamplight and history breathed through every forgotten tome. Today, something extraordinary caught his attention. Hidden behind a loose brick, wrapped in oilcloth, lay a map unlike any he'd ever encountered. It depicted an island that didn't appear on any modern chart, decorated with symbols that matched his personal research perfectly. The compass rose was marked with an unusual design, a spiral within a circle, that matched the sketches in his private journal. Someone had been searching for this place before, someone with knowledge that rivaled his own. His investigation led him to the northern coast, where the lighthouse of Point Verdante stood sentinel against crashing waves. The keeper's daughter, Emilia, worked as a marine biologist, documenting ocean currents and rare species. When Julian first saw her examining charts in the lighthouse library, his breath caught. She had the same intensity in her eyes, the same passion for discovery that burned within him. "Those markings," Emilia said quietly, not looking up from her notebook. "I've seen them before, in my father's old journals." They spent that evening comparing notes, their fingers brushing accidentally as they spread documents across the wooden table. Emilia revealed that her great-grandfather had been a navigator on a ship that supposedly found the island, but never returned. The few salvaged records hinted at an impossible place, where nature defied explanation, where time seemed distorted and the air shimmered like heat waves in winter. "It's real," Julian whispered, and Emilia finally met his gaze. Her eyes were the color of the sea on stormy days, complex and mysterious. "Probably," she replied, a slight smile playing at her lips. "But real places have real dangers." Julian leaned closer, and Emilia didn't pull away. The lamplight cast shadows across her face, highlighting the freckles scattered across her cheekbones. He reached out and gently tucked a strand of her dark hair behind her ear. His touch lingered, and Emilia's breathing quickened. "We should leave within the week," Emilia said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "The monsoon season is approaching. After that, the seas become impassable." "Then we don't have much time to prepare," Julian replied. But his words carried a double meaning. There was something electric between them, a connection that transcended their shared obsession with finding the island. Emilia stood and walked toward the window, gazing out at the lighthouse beam cutting through the darkness. Julian joined her, and they stood shoulder to shoulder in comfortable silence, watching the waves crash against the rocks below. Somewhere out there, between myth and reality, the island awaited. But as Julian stole a glance at Emilia's profile, he realized the greatest discovery might be standing right beside him. The jungle swallowed them whole on the 3rd day, dense canopy blocking out the sun and replacing it with an eerie green twilight. Emilia moved with surprising grace through the undergrowth, her knowledge of plant life guiding them away from poisonous flowers and parasitic vines. Julian followed close behind, watching how she navigated the impossible terrain with quiet confidence. His admiration for her grew with each step. Tomas appeared on their fourth day, materializing from between the ferns like a spirit of the forest itself. He was lean and weathered, with eyes that held ancient pain. When Julian tensed, Tomas simply smiled and revealed he'd been tracking them since the coast, protecting them from hunters and poachers who roamed these woods. "I know this place," Tomas said in accented English. "My family was bound to the island's treasure for generations. I search for redemption, not riches." That night, they made camp near a hidden waterfall, its waters glowing faintly with bioluminescent algae. After Thomas fell asleep, Emilia found Julian sitting on the rocks beside the cascade, dangling his feet above the water. She sat beside him, and neither spoke for a long time. "I'm afraid," Emilia finally admitted. "Not of the jungle or the unknown, but of what I feel when I'm near you." Julian turned to her, his heart pounding. "Me too," he whispered. They kissed then, tentatively at first, then with growing passion. Emilia's hands found their way to his chest as Julian cupped her face, his thumbs tracing her cheekbones. They moved into the shallow water, still clothed, unable to break their connection. Under the waterfall, surrounded by glowing water and mist, they held each other as if they were the only two people in existence. Later, wrapped in each other's arms on the mossy ground beside the pool, Emilia traced patterns on Julian's chest. "Whatever happens," she murmured against his shoulder, "I'm glad I found you." Julian kissed the top of her head, inhaling the scent of earth and rain in her hair. "You didn't find me," he said softly. "We were always meant to find each other." The journey resumed, but everything had changed. They moved together now, with an intuitive understanding, often reaching for each other's hand when the path became difficult. Tomas observed this with a knowing smile, as if confirming something he'd already suspected. On their 10th day in the jungle, they discovered ancient stone markers overgrown with moss, matching the symbols from the map. They were close now. Emilia squeezed Julian's hand, and he squeezed back. They were no longer just treasure hunters. They were partners, bound by more than adventure and discovery. As the jungle grew denser, and the air thicker with expectation, they faced whatever lay ahead, together. The entrance to the caves yawned before them like the mouth of some sleeping beast, jagged crystal formations catching what little light penetrated the jungle's canopy. Emilia hesitated at the threshold, and Julian wrapped his arm around her waist, pulling her close. Tomas held the lantern steady, his expression unreadable as he gazed into the darkness below. They descended for hours, the crystal walls growing more intricate with each level. Colors refracted through the translucent stone created kaleidoscopic patterns that danced across their skin. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Emilia stayed close to Julian, her hand never leaving his. Then they heard the gunshot. Sebastian emerged from a side passage with 6 armed mercenaries, his tailored suit impossibly clean despite the jungle journey. He smiled at them with predatory elegance, his eyes gleaming with avarice and something darker, betrayal. "Tomas," Sebastian said, his voice dripping with mock sympathy. "Still playing the hero, I see. But you know I always find what I'm looking for." Emilia's grip on Julian's hand tightened as Tomas stepped forward, his body language shifting into something dangerous. "You promised we were done, Sebastian," Tomas said, his voice tight with controlled rage. "You promised." "I promised nothing," Sebastian replied smoothly. I simply allowed you to believe what you needed to believe to lead me here. The revelation hit like a physical blow. Emilia looked at Tomas, searching his face for truth. Tomas met her eyes, and the anguish there was undeniable. He has my sister, Tomas said quietly, to Julian and Emilia. He's held her captive for 5 years. I had no choice. There's always a choice, Emilia whispered, though her voice held no anger, only sadness. Sebastian raised his weapon, aiming it at Emilia. Everything slowed. Julian reacted instinctively, pulling Emilia down as the shot ricocheted off crystal walls. Tomas launched himself at Sebastian, and chaos erupted. In the confusion, Tomas threw something across the cavern, a small crystal etched with the same spiraling compass symbol from the map. Go, Tomas shouted to Julian and Emilia. Through the eastern passage, I'll hold them. We can't leave you, Emilia protested, but Julian was already pulling her away, hearing gunfire intensify behind them. They ran through narrow passages, crystal formations scraping their skin, drawing blood. Behind them, Tomas's shouts grew fainter. Julian wanted to return, wanted to fight alongside the man who had become their friend. But Emilia pulled him forward with desperate strength. They burst into a massive cavern where an underground river churned with dark water. Emilia collapsed against Julian, tears streaming down her face. He held her as she sobbed for Tomas, for the betrayal, for the complexity of the world they inhabited. In that moment, surrounded by glittering crystal and endless darkness, Julian realized that treasure and discovery meant nothing without the people you loved beside you. We have to go back, Emilia said, wiping her tears. We have to save him. We will, Julian promised, kissing her forehead. But not alone. The ship cut through water that seemed to shimmer with otherworldly properties, colors shifting from deep purple to silver to colors without names. Emilia stood at the bow, her wind-tangled hair whipping around her face, while Julian stood beside her with his hand resting on the small of her back. Sebastian stood at the helm, no longer their adversary, but something more complicated, a reluctant ally born from unexpected redemption. It had taken Sebastian 5 days to locate his sister, after he'd turned against his own operation. She was traumatized, but alive. In exchange for her freedom and his cooperation in securing Tomas's release from captors, Sebastian had agreed to join them on this final expedition. His mercenaries had been disbanded, his empire crumbling as he chose a different path. The island materialized through the mist, like a dream becoming solid. Lush vegetation covered white cliffs, and waterfalls cascaded from impossible heights. When they landed on the pristine beach, Cassandra was waiting. She appeared ageless, perhaps 30 or perhaps 300, with silver hair that flowed like mercury and eyes that held the weight of centuries. I am the keeper, Cassandra said simply. I have waited long for those who sought not gold, but truth. She led them through the island to a temple carved from mother of pearl, where the walls hummed with an energy that made Julian's bones vibrate. Cassandra explained that the island was indeed real, but it existed between dimensions, a sanctuary created by ancient explorers who sought escape from greed and corruption. The island offers you a choice, Cassandra said, her ageless eyes moving between them. You may remain here within the portal, experiencing every adventure, every mystery, every moment of discovery the multiverse contains. All knowledge, all sensation, all experience will be yours. Or you may leave, returning to your ordinary lives, carrying only memories. Sebastian stepped forward and placed his hand on Julian's shoulder. I choose to stay, Sebastian said quietly. I've lived a life of taking. It's time to experience something different, something infinite. He walked toward the shimmering portal without looking back. Emilia and Julian looked at each other. He saw his entire world in her eyes. She saw her entire future in his. I choose you, Julian whispered, reaching for her hand. Always you. Emilia squeezed his hand, tears glistening on her cheeks. Then let's go home, she said softly. Cassandra smiled, expression both sad and knowing. You have made the wisest choice, she said. Love bound to a single person transcends all mysteries and adventures. As they sailed away from the island, it faded behind them like morning mist, becoming legend once more. Cassandra's words echoed in their hearts. Sometimes the greatest treasure is knowing exactly what matters most. The lighthouse beam swept across the northern waters with familiar rhythm, just as it had for 100 years. Emilia adjusted the great lens with practiced ease, her wedding band catching the golden evening light. Julian climbed the circular stairs with 2 steaming mugs of tea. Their warmth, a comfort against the salt-tinged wind that perpetually surrounded their home. He's here, Emilia said, not turning from the window. They had been expecting this visitor for weeks. Thomas emerged from the cottage, fully healed, though he moved with a different grace than before, tempered by experience and trauma. He'd spent the last year rebuilding his life, and the lighthouse had become his sanctuary too. Julian and Emilia had insisted he stay as long as he needed, and he'd become something like family to them both. The Cartographers' Society has sent letters, Thomas said. Settling onto the bench with them, they want you both to lead expeditions. They're offering substantial funding. Julian and Emilia exchanged glances, a silent conversation only they could interpret after their shared journey. Emilia squeezed Julian's hand beneath the table. Tell them we appreciate the offer, Julian said, but we've decided to chart our own course. They had spent months after returning from their adventure rediscovering themselves, understanding that the person you love is the greatest discovery of all. Julian had sold most of his research to museums and archives, ensuring the island's legend would live on in academic circles. Emilia had written a groundbreaking thesis on bioluminescent organisms that had gained international recognition. But what mattered most to them both was simpler. 3 months ago, Julian had proposed beneath these very stars, sliding a pearl ring onto Emilia's finger, in the same spot where they'd first touched beneath the waterfall. She'd cried and laughed and said yes without hesitation. They'd married quietly 2 weeks ago, with Thomas as witness and Emilia's father as officiant. No elaborate ceremony, no grand gestures, just 2 people who'd faced impossible odds together, choosing each other with full consciousness of what that meant. We're planning one more expedition, Emilia said, smiling at Julian. But this one is different. We want to document uncharted marine ecosystems and establish conservation areas. We want to help protect places we've discovered, rather than exploit them. Julian pulled Emilia close, breathing in the familiar scent of salt water and lavender soap that clung to her hair. We're leaving in 3 months, he added. Our research vessel is being equipped as we speak. Thomas smiled, genuinely happy for the first time since they'd known him. Then you'll need a 3rd crew member, he said, I've been studying maritime navigation. I think I'd be good at it. We were hoping you'd say that, Emilia said warmly. As night fell and the lighthouse beam cut through darkness, the three of them sat together in comfortable silence, watching the waves crash against the rocks below. Julian felt Emilia's head rest against his shoulder, and he pressed a kiss to her temple. Somewhere on that vast ocean lay new mysteries waiting to be uncovered, new wonders to explore. But sitting in this moment, with the woman he loved beside him, and a friend finding redemption in their shared purpose, Julian understood the ultimate truth. Adventure and romance weren't about reaching distant islands or uncovering ancient secrets. They were about the people you chose to take on the journey, the connections you forged in moments of vulnerability and shared wonder. The lighthouse beam swept across the water again, illuminating a path forward into unknown waters. But this time, Julian wasn't afraid. He had Emilia's hand in his, Thomas's friendship at his side, and a future that promised endless discovery. As they prepared for their next voyage, they weren't just mapping the world. They were writing their story together, one adventure at a time. The beginning was never really behind them. It was always ahead, waiting in the next dawn, the next horizon, the next moment they chose to face the world as partners, rather than solitary seekers.